Welcome to the Prime English Professional Development Training. Today's session, titled Speak, Read, Succeed Strategies to Help Filipino Readers Gain Fluency, aims to deepen our understanding of the importance of reading fluency. Is reading fluency relevant only for teachers of foundational skills? Or should teachers in the upper grades also be aware of it, given its significant impact on comprehension? Thank you for joining us, and we hope you find today's webinar meaningful and useful. I am Teacher Gwen, your host for today's webinar. With me this morning are members of the Prime English team. We would like to know where everyone's joining from. Please type your school's name in the chat box along with your city or province. Good morning, everyone. I see someone from Rojas, Ateneo de Iloilo, Dumaguete City, Negros Oriental, Caloocan, Asian Computer College, Binyan City, Laguna, DLSU Laguna, SPLCI Cebu, Christian Ecclesiastal School, Bulacan, and keep them coming from TLC NBS Baliwag, Bulacan. Good morning, everyone. A warm shout out to our attendees. Thank you for being with us today. This is also a great moment to say hello to one another. May I invite everyone to turn on your cameras and microphones if possible so we can see you and greet each other. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning po.
Good morning po.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to hear and see all of you today. Once again, thank you for choosing to be with us today. This morning, we are also joined by teachers from our Prime Math partner schools. We hope that you will find today's session valuable as well. No matter the subject area we teach, we are all teachers of reading because strong reading skills are the foundation for learning across all disciplines. By understanding and supporting reading fluency, we can help our students better comprehend and engage with content in every subject, from English to math and beyond. Again, welcome everyone. Before we officially begin, let me share some quick guidelines to ensure a smooth and productive session. Kindly rename your Zoom ID to your school acronym and your first and last name. Example, ABC Maya Cruz. Please keep your microphones on mute to maintain clear audio for everyone. Use the chat box for your questions. All questions will be addressed during Q&A. The session will be recorded and the link may be provided upon request. To officially open today's webinar, it is my honor to introduce Scholastic Philippines General Manager, Ms. Jane Tionco Aguirre, who will be sharing her welcome message.
Good morning, dear teachers, school leaders, and partners in education. Welcome to this year's Prime English Professional Development Training. I am truly grateful to see all of you, committed educators who continue to show up, learn, and grow for the sake of your students. Your presence today speaks volumes about your dedication, especially in a time when classrooms across the country face challenges in literacy, comprehension, and reading engagement. Today's theme, Speak, Read, Succeed, Strategies to Help Filipino Readers Gain Fluency, is more than just a topic. It is a call to action. Reading fluency is not just about speed and accuracy. It is about giving every child the confidence to make meaning, to connect ideas, and to understand the world through text. Whether you teach in the early grades or the upper levels, your role in developing fluency is crucial because strong readers become strong learners. Across the international assessments and national measures, we have seen the gaps in our students' literacy development. But we also know that behind every challenge is an opportunity to teach better, to innovate more, and to empower our learners with skills that will shape their futures. At Scholastic, this has always been our mission: to partner with schools in building strong, capable, and joyful readers. Through programs like Prime English, we aim to support you with tools, strategies, and research-informed practices that are practical and effective, especially in real Philippine classrooms. My hope is that today becomes more than just a training session. I hope it becomes a moment of realization that all of us, no matter our subject area, are teachers of reading. Because reading is the foundation on which all learning stands. And when we strengthen a child's ability to read, we strengthen their ability to succeed in every subject matter, including math, science, social studies, and even real-life decision-making. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for your students, and thank you for choosing to walk with Scholastic in this journey toward better literacy and better futures for Filipino learners. May today's session inspire you, challenge you, and equip you with strategies you can bring back to your classrooms immediately. Once again, welcome to the Prime English Professional Development Training. Let's speak, let's read, and together, let's help our learners succeed. Happy learning, everyone!
Thank you, Ms. Jane Aguirre, for setting the purpose of today's webinar. Considering where we are in the international assessments and the current status of literacy in the country, it is essential that we address the gaps in literacy instruction. Equipping ourselves with effective strategies to help students gain reading fluency is a crucial step in this process. By fostering fluency, we not only support students in becoming more confident and capable readers, but we also help them develop the skills they need to become lifelong learners across all subjects. Before we introduce our resource speaker, let's take a moment to reflect on the realities in our own classrooms. Understanding what you observe daily will help us anchor today's discussion. To make this session engaging, we invite you to respond to the question that you are now seeing on the screen. We would like to hear your classroom experiences. Please use the chat box for your responses. Let's try to make it as brief as possible. The question is, from your classroom experience, what specific student behaviors or challenges make you feel that stronger instruction in reading proficiency is needed? From your classroom experience, what specific student behaviors or challenges make you feel that stronger instruction in reading proficiency is needed? So kindly type your experiences in our chat box. Signs of disinterest from the student. Thank you, Teacher Irene. Short attention span. They easily get bored when reading. From CAIS Makati, Teacher Andrea. Low reading endurance. Reading so fast just to finish. Do we have more experiences from our other teachers? Students are not very engaged with reading anymore. All right. Thank you for sharing your insights. Your experiences highlight the real challenges our learners face and reinforce why today's topic is so important. To help us deepen our understanding and equip us with effective strategies, it is now my pleasure to introduce our resource speaker. Our resource speaker is both a math and a reading enthusiast. Her engagement in reading and literacy began 29 years ago when she established Alpha Angelicum Academy, a progressive school in Binyan, Laguna. She specialized in reading and math disabilities to meet the needs of learners who process information differently. Her professional training includes Davis dyslexia in Singapore, the Slinger-Rowland method from the United States, and Orton Gillingham Mathematics, a program for children with math disabilities, where she is among the few tutors in the Philippines. She also holds a certificate on autism from the Mind Institute of the University of California, Davis, and has completed several courses on health and epidemiology from the University of Washington, as well as programs initiated by PAYAC under the Lee Kuan Yew Institute of the National University of Singapore. In November 2024, she completed the program on Innovation for Leaders in Education at the Asian Institute of Management. Dr. Allen has held several leadership roles, including serving as president of the Reading Association of the Philippines, chair of the International Development in Asia Committee of the International Literacy Association, president of the Laguna Private Schools Administrators Association and the Zonta Club of Laguna, and founding president of the Private Schools Administrators Association of the City of Binyan. She has also served as a member of the Technical Working Group of the Department of Education's Library Hub and is currently a member of the advisory board of the ADHD Society of the Philippines. Fellow educators, let us give a warm welcome with hearts and emojis to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Merlene Allen. Good morning, Dr. Allen.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you, Scholastic, for this opportunity to share this morning. I'm not so sure if you can see my presentation already. I hope that it's already there. Can you see it?
Kindly share. There we go, Dr.
Ay,
Allen.
teka.
Can see it
Wait lang,
already.
kasi nagpunta siya dun sa huli. Anyway, there you go. Can you see it? Yeah.
Yes, very clear.
Thank you very much for this. No, this morning I have actually coined the title "Speak, Read, Succeed: Strategies to Help Filipino Readers Gain Fluency," simply because I wanna borrow the words of Timothy Shanahan, one of our gurus when it comes to reading, that no reading has taken place without children speaking and without comprehension. And he further said that, wait lang, no, I'll increase my audio, I think, if you cannot hear me very clearly. Okay. And he further said that you cannot take fluency silently, meaning to say, these all have something to do with listening to children read. Oh my God, what's happening here? Okay, just wait, no? I think. Here. Yeah. My slides are, I don't know what's happening. Anyway, so that's why I have coined this as Speak, Read, and Succeed, because this is all about gaining fluency. Okay. So let me just give you this one. They said that learning is the capacity to learn is a gift. That's right. Because the capacity to learn is somehow dictated by our cognitive skills. And this is unique for each one of us. Not all of us will have this. I mean, the magnitude of the way we learn is different for each one. And then the ability to learn is a skill. It's something that we learn as a skill. And then the willingness to learn is a choice. I have heard that some of you are saying yung motivation of the children and so on. So that will all fall under the willingness to learn. So I would like to go through very quickly to the different characteristics of readers from the pre-alphabetic to the older kids. For the pre-K, that this will be your nursery kids, your junior kindergarten children. At this level, they still don't have a grasp of the alphabetic principle. They don't understand that printed words need to be decoded with attention to letters and letter patterns. And that's why these days, one of the trends is books that don't have any words. Have you heard of that? Perhaps if you're a good artist, you can go into that. But they are saying, or research is saying, that more and more children develop better comprehension when they start with this kind of things. Many preschoolers do recognize some letters before coming to school, even before coming to school. Children at this stage usually do have a rudiment level of phonological awareness, especially for those who have been exposed early on to rhymes, to songs, and so on. So tongue twisters, early on they would have this kind of knowledge. By the end of the kindergarten, this is called the partial alphabetic. Typical children already recognize all or nearly all the letters, both the lowercase and the uppercase. I think for most private schools, this is true, right? They can name and give sounds for single letters, especially the consonants, because at this point, not only phonemic awareness is very important, but also the knowledge of phonemes and digraphs as well. It says, especially consonants, because vowels are the most difficult sounds. A, for example, has different sounds. E, in particular, E is the most difficult. They may also know some short vowel sounds, in particular the short A, the short O, the short U, and I. Ang E, as I've mentioned, is the most difficult. That's why in the parlance of reading intervention, E is the vowel that we would usually teach the last. They tend to be very dependent on picture or sentence to help read words at this stage, because at this point, no, as we've mentioned, they don't have a grasp of the words and the letters yet. Oral language comprehension far exceeds their reading comprehension. That's true. In fact, for us to take a look at the cognitive skills of the children, we have to look at the oral comprehension, or the oral language comprehension. And when we do screening, for example, for dyslexia, one of the things that we usually would look into is what is the difference between oral or listening comprehension with the reading comprehension. If there is a big gap in the reading comprehension and the listening comprehension of the child, then there's a possibility that he or she might be suffering from some form of reading problems. Okay, so the domains of literacy during the emergent literacy stage would be, let's take a look at the learner's characteristics first. No, the learners at this point in time is now beginning to gain control of oral language. Before coming to school, they might just be speaking in phrases. But once they get to school, they now are speaking into sentences. They know how to tell stories. They can retell stories, and they can even what happened in the house last night, or what did they do last weekend. Okay, at this point. So there's the control of oral language. What else? They rely on pictures in the text, because the picture will give them cues as to what the text is all about. Some of them would pretend to read. Have you encountered children like this? They are pretending to read. Especially if they've been exposed to the book for so many times, no? Yung pala they have already memorized it. They recognize rhymes. They start recognizing letters at this point. That those are the characteristics of the learners. What then do we focus on in terms of literacy domains? We look at their attitude towards literacy, language, and literature. As I've mentioned, we look at their listening comprehension. We also should be very observant of the oral language development. What is the reason for that? Language development is very important because it is an indication of the speech ability, the ability of the child to speak. There are two domains there. There's the receptive language, and then the receptive language, and then the articulation. If it's just an articulation problem, for me, it's okay. But if it is the receptive language that is lacking in the child, meaning to say, or that where the child is weak at, like for example, they cannot process information as quickly as the other children in the classroom is processing the information, then it could pose some problems, or it could indicate some areas of concern later on. Okay. Then a phonological awareness, how the sound, how the letter is sounded, how the word is sounded, and so on. Book and print orientation. They know where's the start of the book, what's the cover, where's the back part, what does the cover tell them, and so on. Alphabet knowledge is also part of the literacy domain at this stage. Okay. By the end of grade 1, what is the expectation? They should have already decoded a wide variety of unfamiliar one-syllable, phonetically regular words. But in the case of the private schools in the Philippines, it's quite a different thing, right? We want our grade 1 children to be reading small paragraphs already. Typical readers do recognize some common words automatically, meaning to say they have what we call automaticity, without the need for sounding out, especially when it comes to basic sight words, which I will be discussing later on. They still need to apply their decoding skills to so many words, especially less common or long words. Typical readers are much less dependent on pictures or sentence context to read the words. They will already be able to read them. Children's oral language comprehension still far exceeds their reading comprehension at this stage. Meaning to say, the oral language and the listening comprehension is still far above the reading comprehension. Okay? At the end of the grade 2, this is what we call the consolidated alphabetic stage. Here, children already have an increasing ability to decode unfamiliar long words, including words with consonant blends or LE like stable, marble, and then the phonetically regular two-syllable words, some multi-syllable words, especially words in their oral vocabularies already. Those that they are familiar with, like butterfly, potato, remember, and so on. Typical readers at this stage and continuing to grade 3 consolidate letter patterns such as those associated with common prefixes. They already know somehow some prefixes at this point. Okay. To make reading far more faster and more automatic, as I've mentioned, they will gain some sort of automaticity at this stage, particularly with the letters that, with the words that they are already familiar with. There is also increased knowledge of common letter patterns. It's also reflected in their improved spelling of words. So spelling can come in at this point. At the same time, they already know some words, some spelling rules. They have not only recognized the word, there's not only word recognition, but there's also the application of some spelling rules at this stage. Now, these are all about early literacy abilities. Where do children, or how do they develop early literacy abilities? Where do they get it? They get it from informal learning experiences. Okay, like for example, the sight words, the the words around. In my case, no, when my nieces and nephews were still young, we used to, when there's no cell phone yet, we used to read road signs together. That's how I teach them when we go to a place. On the way to the place where we're going, we used to read road signs, and we even play games like identifying plate numbers that start with the letter G, for example, or letter D, for example. So those are things that we do, no? Those are what we call informal learning experiences. Or games, little games like the one that I used to play with my apo. I can see something green. Can you point it to me and tell me what it is? So those are things that can be done, no? Those are part of of informal learning experiences. Or when in the house, you repeat to them that this is the chair where you sit in, where you sit on is a chair. This is the table, and so on. In fact, for some mothers, I do what you call this, I do recommend to them, those mothers whose children have reading difficulties, label the different parts of your house. That's also an informal learning experience. Aside from the fact that they are able to say it, they would recognize that there's a word that is connected with it, and it's composed of letters, and this is how you say it. Okay. Of course, formal learning experiences would mean what is happening in the school. We give them books, we teach them directly the phonics. We have phonics instruction, we do phonemic awareness exercises, and so on. And then literacy-rich environments. I think the example that I've given regarding labeling the parts of the house would be part of the literacy-rich environments. Having your mini libraries inside your classrooms where your students can just get, one book and read is a literacy-rich environment. Having a reading corner in your classroom is part of coming up with literacy-rich environments. Okay? So what are the reading realities? Why did I start with that? Because I want to make an emphasis that young children should be taught how to read. Because children learn how to read. Sorry for that, no, na double yun too. Learn how to read. They should be taught how to read. And later on, they will make use of this as a tool to learn other things. They will be reading to learn later on in life. And that's why the K to 3 is very important, because those are the foundational skills. And studies have shown that if children don't acquire the skills that they should have acquired, literacy skills in particular that they are unable to acquire at K to 3, then there will be problems later on. And sometimes these problems are difficult to catch and remedy already when they reach grade 4 and higher years. Okay? So that's why at an early age, we must be teaching our children how to read. Later on, I will tell you why is this so. And then it was emphasized that word recognition is very important. And what are the things that we need to do? What are the things that we need to teach word recognition? This would include phonological and phonemic awareness. It's part of the 5 elements of a good reading program according to the National Reading Panel. The same with phonics and decoding skills. Automatic recognition of words. That is what I meant earlier by automaticity. Ability to read common phonetic words. Okay, words that rhyme, words that go together. Oral comprehension, on the other hand, would be dependent on vocabulary knowledge. Vocabulary is a big thing. And part of the reason why children have difficulty understanding a text or understanding a story is because of poor vocabulary. Background knowledge, schema, no, they have to connect. So comprehension takes place when they are able to connect their background knowledge with the present knowledge or the present thing that they are going to do right now. So retrieving background knowledge to connect it with the present situation is part and parcel of what we call comprehension. Sentence comprehension is part of oral comprehension. Understanding figurative language is a big thing, but then as early as grade 3, we teach figurative language. So by the end of grade 3, typical readers have large mastered basic word decoding skills, including syllabic skills for decoding, and most multisyllabic words, except for, of course, for unusual words, because unusual words are difficult, okay? Typical readers can decode most unfamiliar words quickly and easily, and also recognize most common words automatically by sight. Reading fluency is generally well established at this point, and this is actually part of our discussion, main part of our discussion later on. This is generally well established at this point, at least in grade appropriate text. Take note, in grade appropriate text, meaning to say, if they are 9 years old or 8 years old, then the level of the text that they are supposed to read at this point should be developmentally appropriate. Okay. What else? At the end of grade 3 and 4, vocabulary and morphemic knowledge becomes especially important to reading comprehension and also to spelling. Again, notice that vocabulary has appeared once again. I will be discussing this in detail later on. Increasingly use strategies to aid reading comprehension. Like at this point, they might have already subscribed to making use of pointers, their fingers to point to words, or for some, they might have already be using marginalia, that is drawing along the margins. That is, if teachers do allow students to make use of their pencil to draw along the margins of the book. Do you know that that is a very good strategy to improve comprehension? So these strategies include summarization, questioning, inferencing, along with fix-up strategies for when comprehension fails, such as rereading or looking a word up in a dictionary. But this is something that should also be taught at this level. So the question now is, do schools still have dictionaries? Are we still making use of the traditional dictionaries and thesaurus? Okay. I hope that these questions that I'm posing at this point are making you think, okay? At this point also, they can devote more of their mental resources to comprehension because they already recognize the words, and thus less time is spent on decoding and recognizing the words, but more time should be spent on comprehension. So the gap between reading comprehension and oral language comprehension begins to narrow. Now, at this point in time, the oral language, they might be not saying anything, but then actually the reading comprehension increases at this point. Okay? Now I want to present to you the simple view of reading according to the science of reading. It's saying that there's the decoding of text combined with comprehension of language. Then the child is able to read to gain meaning. Notice that the operational, the operator here, or the operation symbol here is not even addition, it's multiplication. It means to say that this is something that should be done a lot of times so that there is reading to gain meaning on the part of the child. So we allow rereading, decoding of text, then we do give students a lot of opportunities to test whether they really have comprehended the language or not. Again, it's multiplication, it's not addition. Implication to the teaching learning process. This is something that should be done regularly. This is something that should be repeated in the classroom, not only during reading instruction, but also in other language-based subjects. Okay? Again, they say that if children recognize the word and there's language comprehension, there is reading comprehension. Although I have a slide on this, but I would like to say it this time, comprehension does not take place, or rather reading does not take place unless there is comprehension. If a child is merely reading but not comprehending, then that is just simply decoding. There is only reading when there is comprehension. Sorry for the wrong spelling. There's double R there. Anyway, so word recognition and language comprehension, there is the decoding. When we talk about decoding, the word level skill is already familiar to the child. There is the list of words that should be already familiar at grade 1, at grade 2, at grade 3, at grade 4, and so on. And then part of decoding also is the ability to retrieve words from memory. So again, building on that prior knowledge. And part of the reason why a lot of students do well, for example, in terms of reading when they reach grade 1, is because if they have spent already 3 years in preschool, there's already a lot in their memory bank that they can retrieve. Especially if they've been in the school for 3 years prior to grade 1. Okay? But they don't actually, they can bridge comprehension, or they can be bridged to comprehension, but then also it's actually multifactorial. There's also other factors that can come in when it comes to determining reading comprehension. Linguistic comprehension, on the other hand, is the literal and inferential construction of meaning from the words read. It's how children interpret the meaning of the words. And again, I think when it comes to linguistic comprehension, in my opinion, a lot also would depend on how much can be retrieved from the memory, of the child, from the brain. So we say that this time, so the first part is all about us teaching reading, because children need to be taught, young children need to be taught how to read. But older children this time read to learn. And as they read to learn, there's a lot of skills lot of factors that can come in. And these are some things that would affect our reading instruction. Whether we like it or not, these are things that could, affect reading instruction. What would that be? First would be the 21st century skills. It's part of what we need to teach our children these days to make them globally competitive. Another thing that is challenging for us teachers and for the Filipino readers would be the present dynamics of the Filipino families. Let's accept the fact that the dynamics of the Filipino families have changed. In the past, if you're my age or a little bit younger than me, when you go home, the mother is there. But these days, it might be the father, it might be the grandfather, or the children will just get the key of their house somewhere because their parents are still in the office working. Okay? These things affect, the pre-service readiness of the teachers. Let's accept the fact that not all of you are actually able to get formal lessons in reading. In the past, there's the developmental reading as part of the BSE and the BE Ed, the BE Ed curriculum. I heard that it has been removed. And that is very important because all teachers are reading teachers. And let's also accept the fact that if you're an English major, you were not able to go through the rudiments of being a reading teacher, because those are two different things, okay? So the pre-service readiness is also a very big challenge. So that's why we're having this. Thank you, Scholastic, for this, no? And then there are also the curricular reforms. In the Philippines, everything is politically based. Part of the reason why countries have good educational programs is because the secretaries or the ministers of the education stay there despite the fact that there's a change in the president or change in the prime minister. But in our case, a change in the leadership would mean change in the secretary of education. And let's accept the fact that these people would bring in what they want to happen in the educational system. Okay? So just like for us in our case, no, we started with the Matatag curriculum with this administration, and it's only for a year that it has been really what do you call this? Really called Matatag, then they have to change it and so on. So there's a lot of challenges. But despite all of this, if we take a look at the child and consider the child in the center of everything that we do, these are all things that we can hurdle. Okay. But another thing that would be a challenge to all of us teachers would be the challenges of the reader themselves. Some of them might be, developmentally challenged, and that's part of the reason why they couldn't deliver in your particular classes, in particular, your reading classes. Okay? But as we've mentioned, no, despite these challenges, despite these changes in the curriculum, despite you saying that, for example, religion is the core of your curriculum, but how can the children read and understand what that core is? It all takes reading. So the reality is that regardless of your mission, your vision, and so on, the core of the curriculum is really reading. Even if you're a science school, reading is still the core of the curriculum, because how can the students learn all and grasp all those science concepts without reading comprehension? Okay? So I want to share this cartoons with you. So this is what is happening right now. Before it's the Gen Z, now it's the Generation Alpha. Our Gen Zs are already in grade 10, perhaps to grade 12. Now, most of our students, if we're in the basic education, we're dealing with the Generation Alpha. And these are the children who were born with the internet already and all this, what do you call this, all these gadgets. Kasama na sa buhay nila yung mga gadgets. Okay? So, just like this example, should be drinking and texting. Children are exposed early on to this kind of things, right? Okay? Another one is this one. No, I like this. But if you don't learn to read, for example, there's somebody who still is unable to read. If you don't learn to read and write, how are you ever going to text? So that's a reality, no? Texting, reading is a prerequisite. Reading and writing is a prerequisite to texting. Okay? I don't know how they do it. So as we are looking into this, we discussed with you that reading should be taught early on because it's a reality that reading is a brain-based activity. Reading has something to do with how our brain works, no? So here is an example, or here is an illustration of the reading brain. So these are the parts of the brain that are connected and are working whenever we read. I will not go through them anymore one by one. This is just an indication, or I'm just trying to show you how the brain is a reading brain. Okay? The left hemisphere in particular is a reading brain. And in the field, for example, of dyslexia, one of the things that they have seen in the PET scans, in the researches that they have done, is that instead of the blood flowing immediately to the left brain, the left hemisphere, when a dyslexic kid is reading, For the neurotypical kids, when they read, the blood flow of the brain is towards the left hemisphere right away. On the other hand, for those with dyslexia, according to these PET scans, it's actually moving longer length, no, mas mahaba yung travel ng blood. That's why it takes time for them to recognize. At the same time, of course, dyslexia is actually a perception problem also in terms of recognizing letters and words, okay? So the role of neuroscience in reading, this is something that we have to understand and to accept at this point, no? That the human brain is not pre-wired to learn to read naturally. No one is born who can already read. And that's why reading should be taught. And I should say it should be taught explicitly. There has to be a mastery of reading until grade 2, at least, or beginning grade 3. Okay? Because the mastery of the phonemes, the mastery of phonemic awareness, the mastery of decoding short vowel sounds or short sight words and so on, this will actually be used by these children to learn other subjects when they read at the middle of grade 3. Okay? So reading is a complex process that occurs in 3 different but connected areas of the brain. And that's why, as I was saying, let me go back to this. For comprehension, there has to be an interaction of these things for comprehension to take place. Okay? So there are 5 areas of reading instruction according to the National Reading Panel. I'm not so sure if they have added to this, but this 5 is already too much. And if we actually make sure that these 5 are really in our classes, then I think there's already a possibility of success in the reading instruction. Okay, so first, they should have phonemic awareness and phonics, and this is usually done in the lower years. Then I have made fluency red because this discussion is all about fluency. It's all about speaking, reading, and then being successful. Okay. Then you have vocabulary and text comprehension. So let me go through fluency first. What is reading fluency? I will not be discussing phonics and phonemic awareness anymore because that's part of emergent literacy. And this discussion, as I've mentioned, is all about fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary, okay? Fluency in particular. So reading fluency is the ability to read a text quickly, accurately, and with proper expression. As one research had said, it is actually reading as if the person or the reader is just speaking. Okay? So that is how we test, no, whether somebody is fluent or not. He reads or she reads as if she is just speaking. Reading fluency refers to a level of accuracy and rate where decoding is relatively effortless. They're able to recognize the words right away. Where oral reading is smooth and accurate with the correct prosody, prosody means proper expression, and where attention can be allocated to comprehension. Okay? Part of the reason why children with reading problems are not fluent readers is because they might have difficulty with decoding, okay? And they don't know what the punctuations mean and so on. Anyway, so those are things that we are going to discuss later on. So the 3 dimensions of reading fluency, ladies and gentlemen, my dear teachers, is all about accuracy in word decoding. Okay. That's why children should really be taught decoding. Automatic processing, the speed. Some children would read very fast, but that is not right. It should be the right speed. This is not a speed test, but the right speed. Okay? And then prosodic reading would mean they know when to pause. They know how to, when the intonation would go up, like asking a question and so on. That is what we call prosodic reading. And then, of course, punctuation. They say that fluency instruction provides a bridge between word recognition and comprehension. That is very true. And fluency instruction has a direct impact on phonics instruction. So this is the checklist: accuracy, the rate of reading, the expression, not necessarily reading the speed. I read not too fast and not too slow. I read with feeling and I didn't sound like a robot. I follow most or all the punctuation marks as I read the text. So given these elements of fluency instruction, and given these elements for children to become fluent readers, and as what we said, fluency is a bridge toward recognition and comprehension. Thus, my dear teachers, punctuation matters. Let's teach punctuation directly. We don't assume that children know how to observe punctuation. For the English teachers, the reading teachers, I hope that this is part of what you do in the classroom. Let's teach punctuations. What is meant by brackets, full stop, comma, exclamation mark, colon, speech marks, question marks, question mark. So these things are very important. And for me, no, this should be actually mastered by grade 2. Sorry for that, no? Or introduced, if not mastered, but then at least introduced beginning grade 2, no, for the punctuation. Because this will also help them with comprehension. Like if there's a comma, do you know that if there's a comma in a sentence, there's a pause, and that pause somehow gives the child a minute or rather a second to process the text for comprehension. So that's why the punctuation matters. And you know that in English, wherever the punctuation is, if you remove, or rather, if you actually move the punctuation from one word to the next word, then the meaning of the sentence changes, right? So that's why this should be taught directly, no? Direct teaching of punctuation. And a lot of guided practice and independent practice on this would be good. So with fluency, you can say that I can read accurately with expression and understand what I read. Most fluent readers are also readers that could comprehend the text that they read. Okay, so let's try to take a look at this two, no? It actually distinguishes the more fluent readers from the less fluent readers. What are their characteristics? The more fluent readers read naturally and with expression as if they are speaking. On the other hand, the less fluent readers read word by word. Thus, oral reading is choppy and plodding. Okay? More fluent readers focus their attention on making connection among the ideas in a text and between these ideas and their background knowledge. Meaning to say, the fluent readers are already comprehending while they are reading. On the other hand, the less fluent readers have their attention primarily on decoding. And thus, little time is left for comprehension. More fluent readers can recognize words and comprehend at the same time, And the sad reality is that our less fluent readers have little attention left for comprehending the text. Okay? Now, if the child, I will insert this, no, but this is part of intervention. If the child is exhibiting these characteristics of being a less fluent reader, does it mean that he cannot understand or he would not be able to understand the text that he has in front of him? He would or she would, provided you give them time. That is if they don't have any cognitive impairment. Okay? Because the impairment in cognition could actually affect reading comprehension. Okay? But if the child can understand what the text is all about, if you read to him, and that is an indication of the listening comprehension, then you have a child here with reading difficulty. Or, worst scenario, he might be dyslexic. Okay, but it's not for us to say that he's dyslexic. We can only make use of the term reading difficulty. Okay? The dyslexia, the labeling of dyslexia is the work of someone else. It's not our work. We're not licensed to do that. Okay? But if the reader, if you want to test whether there's really a problem in terms of the thinking skills, you can try reading to the child and then ask him who, what, where, when questions. If the child is able to understand what you have read to him or to her, then it might just be a problem of decoding the words, recognizing the words, and it could be a problem of decoding and so on. So it's not a problem of the brain, of the comprehension skills, the thinking skills. If it's not a problem of the thinking skills, then that might just be a case of reading comprehension. But if after reading to the child gave you different answers on your questions, or you give him or her who, what, where, when questions, and the child is unable to answer your questions even if you have read to him the second time or to her the second time, then it might be a problem of cognition already. Okay? And that would merit, calling the attention of the parents. If there's a reading expert in the school, within the school, then call the attention of and ask for the help of that reading expert in your school. Okay? You cannot teach fluency silently. Why? Because you have to listen to your child read. You have to listen to your students read. You have to take note of their oral reading ability so that you'll be able to say that your child is a fluent reader or your child is not a fluent reader. I know that with so many students, I think this is one of the concerns of teachers. You have so many students inside the classroom. How can you listen to them one by one? Well, the answer to that is, pag gusto, maraming paraan. Sorry to be saying that, no? One of the things that you can do perhaps is during the week, for example, you schedule 10 kids whom you would listen to while they read, while the rest of the class is doing something else. You call on them one by one. You give them a text. You have a copy of the text that they are reading. You ask them to read, and then you take down miscues. I'll be discussing miscues later on. So you see, when you want to find out whether your student is fluent or not, that's why this is speak, read, succeed. You have to allow them the opportunity to speak and to read orally. And you need to listen to how they read it. Okay. So the three little P's of the famous Timothy Shanahan, who's our expert in terms of reading fluency, he said you need to pause and listen on the part of the teacher. Give time. That is what is meant by pause. Listen. What else? Prompt. Prompt when the struggling reader is unable to read something, we prompt them, we give them cues so that we help them succeed. And when they succeed, we praise them. So those are the 3 P's. Remember them. Pause, prompt, and praise. Okay? So with what I've mentioned, I think at this point in time, I would like to make an emphasis on the value of kid watching. Kid watching is not just finishing all those sit works, paper works, and then grading your students. It's all about listening to them as they read. It's about looking at their behavior as they read. Are there body movements that they do, implying that they don't want to read when you ask them to read orally? Do they frequent the clinic when it's your time for oral reading? Are they confident when you ask them to read? Okay, so I want to make an emphasis on the value of kid watching, and I do hope that all the teachers who are in this webinar are really doing kid watching. Okay. So when it comes to fluency, we look into the corrective feedback. We keep the end in mind. What is that? Fluency is only part of the picture. There's something more when it comes to reading instruction. Yes, repeated readings could be part of what you do, but there's still a lot more that could be done aside from repeated readings. What else is suggestion? Brief sessions of 15 to 30 minutes daily, listening to children read. And then, not all children need all. Learn to differentiate. Like, for example, giving different types of materials, no? What I like about adaptive programs like Scholastic Lit Pro, for example, is that there are selections, there are topics that you can work on, but then the reading levels or the reading materials could be of different levels that are given to the students depending on their level. Okay, so not everybody needs the same thing. We need to learn how to differentiate. Okay? So at this point, I think it's about time for us to call a break. Scholastic, can we now have a break?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
Ayun.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. We will now have a 10-minute break. Sorry, excuse me. Please use this as time to stretch, go on a bio break or get some snacks. Let's be back at 10:16. Yes, 10 minutes. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen, and for everyone. We'll see all of you again in 10 minutes. 10:16 po.
We start out with feelings. Feelings turn into words. Words turn into questions. Who and where and when and how and what does this mean? Delicate questions that arise in the space between knowing and known. When every day is a flush of new fears, new losses, new wins, new whys. Before we're giving answers that turn into beliefs. Before those beliefs become the shape of who we are, we bring our questions to a trusted companion. A voice that makes sense of the things that don't, and helps us find our own voice. Giving us a story. And from the stories we read, come the people we are.
Within every structure of the island, an innate beauty is patent, a poetic masterpiece composed by the hand that emerges unparalleled in every measurement. A canvas of impeccable dimension, by which the soul is soothed and the heart instilled with ambition, induces a spirit of vitality and couth. A significant plethora of discoveries, the mind avidly ponders. For a locus wherein perfection evinces in varieties, is a true paradise of wonders.
Not every journey is gilded with soft cushions or passports stamped in gold. Sometimes it's a bus rattling over dirt roads, the scent of rain clinging to your skin, a ticket's ink stained on your palm. And sometimes it's walking through cities that still breathe your name, even when I try to forget. I move through them as a stranger now, but the streets remember us. We never needed the postcards or the guided tours, never cared for the tallest towers or the landmarks everyone else came to see. You were my favorite destination, and every place was hauntingly beautiful, simply because you were there.
The end of a beginning. I packed my life, and so I left it all, to try and walk away from the memories that call. I crossed the sea, escaped the fight, just to choose peace, reaching for the light, where my soul can be free and my mind driven wild, somewhere where I can finally greet my inner child.
Let us weave together as one community, united in mission and spirit. Every wave signals encouragement, teamwork, and the belief that we are all part of something bigger. This bus, our Prime Express, is not just a vehicle. It is a symbol of our shared journey.
Let us all continue doing our best against our best.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hop On, where inspired learning fuels the future.
The scholastic programs, both English and mathematics, has not only helped our pupils but also our teachers.
I saw that scholastic program really aligns with the science of reading. This could really be very helpful in improving the literacy of our students, especially that we are serving a population that is underserved. because we do serve children with special needs. And I'm very glad that we are with Scholastic, and I'm even promoting this with our schools, with my friends who are also in other schools.
They are very, very functional and easy to use for our teachers. Helpful for them. They don't have to prepare anymore. They just have to review, study, look at the materials, and then ready for use.
The Scholastic World of English is an interactive program, and the kids really enjoy and learn.
Literacy and numeracy is something that's quite a huge concern for all schools. So really, it's a very big help that we have Scholastics, Prime English and Prime Mathematics.
I encourage everyone who is given the opportunity to partner with Scholastic to grab that opportunity, because it's something that will really contribute greatly to their growth and development.
Thank you. For every page you've turned, for every child you're lifted, for every future you've fueled, the journey of learning is long, but with inspired hearts and united hands, the future of Philippine education shines brighter than ever.
The small steps we take today will make a great difference tomorrow, not only in the lives of our learners, but also in the life of our nation. Thank you, and may we all continue to be an instrument of inspiration. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Hop on! All aboard the Prime Express. And this is both an invitation and a promise. It means that every child, every teacher, and every school is welcome to join this incredible adventure of learning.
Welcome back, dear educators. Let's continue our session with Dr. Allen. Over to you now, Dr. Allen.
Hi, wait lang. I'll share again. We stopped at, I hope that you had time during the break to think about your students so that later on, when we do the question and answer, some sort of like a free consultation, you can ask your questions about your students later on. Hey. So, this session in particular is
Dr.
all
Allen,
about...
excuse me.
Yes?
Your camera is off po. Ayun.
Oh, sorry for that.
Thank you so much,
Now, can you
Doc.
see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this session is all about strategies, what is it that we can do when it comes to reading and so on. But I would like to make an emphasis and share with you at the same time what is it that would be challenges in your case, no? So let's talk about the learning difficulty, which is a vicious cycle. So learning difficulty, when you fail to identify it, becomes a school failure. Okay? The failure of the school to do it would be a school failure. At the same time, it could also lead to the children's school failure, especially when it's not identified. So what happens? The student loses confidence and then is discouraged, leading to decreased effort in his or her studies. Anyway, I'm not good at it. Anyway, it's not going to make things better for me, and so on. So school failure eventually can lead to school dropout. And then school dropout is actually a problem, and it's not just an issue or a concern of the individual. It also becomes a community and a family concern. Okay, so it could lead to juvenile delinquency. It could lead to criminal behavior or substance abuse for some. So when you talk about fluency, reading, and comprehension, so this is an example of what we can do. We can make use of a reading rubric. Now, this is just an example. This is very simple, where you have a scale of 1 to 3, where 1 is that it needs help, the child needs help in terms of fluency, in terms of decoding, or in terms of reading comprehension. So if the fluency is 2, decoding is 2, the perfect score is 3. So what happens? It's 78%. Is 78% good enough for you? Okay. So for example, in my case, no, if comprehension is 3, but fluency and decoding are both 2, then that means to say this is at the instructional level. So you remember the 3 levels of reading: independent level, instructional level, and the frustration level. So in the case of a child who's like this, for me, this is at the instructional level, because comprehension is okay. It's just that we need to teach more on fluency and decoding. Okay. So with this, I would like us to walk through some assessment forms of reading. And this is something that we should be doing, something that we would be observing, or we should be observing as classroom teachers. Whether you are a teacher of any subject, whether it's science that you're teaching, or you're teaching, what do you call this, English, you're teaching social studies. So these are things that we need to watch out for. And we call this as miscue analysis. I'm very sure that some of you are familiar with this. So Fountas and Pinelli says that the more you know about what students are attending to as they read, it's not what a student, so there are errors here. The more you know about what students are attending to as they read, the more you can craft instruction that will help them improve. Meaning to say, the more you listen as your children are reading, as your students are reading, the more you do a lot of kid watching, then you can come up with instruction, you can craft your lessons, you can come up with good lesson plans that will help improve your students. So let's talk about the different miscues that children or that readers might, exhibit while they read. The first one is what we call omission. What is omission? It's leaving out or omitting words while reading out loud. For example, reading the cup is red rather than the plastic cup is red. Plastic is omitted. The reason why children omit certain words is because of the fact that they couldn't read it. They couldn't decode it. Okay? You see a lot of this among young children, especially if the word is difficult. Another one is what we call, if there is omission, there is addition or insertion. Like into is read instead of to. Or latest is mentioned by the child because somehow, somewhere, he might have heard it instead of the word late. That is what we call addition. Then reversals. This is the most famous one that we should look out for. Letter reversals, there are also word reversals like in beg, bad, because B and D, for example, can be reversed. Aside from that, there's still a lot of letters that can be reversed aside from B and D. P and Q can also be reversed. So children with this kind of problem are actually, if there's a lot of miscues, including reversal, that could pose a problem. Do you know that reversals, let me just go back to reversals. Reversals don't just happen with letters. They can also happen with numbers. Have you encountered a child when you give him an addition sentence of 6 plus 7? The answer there is 13. She would write 31 instead of 13. But when you ask her orally, what is 6 plus 7? He'll tell you that it is 13. Then you'll wonder, how come in the paper it's 31? So mistakes like this should be something that should catch the attention of the teacher, because it might not be an indication of a mathematical operation problem. It might be a problem of reversing the ones with the tens. Or the 3, the answer is 13, but the 3 is reversed. Okay? So, dyslexia and dyscalculia are relatives. Dyslexia is a reading problem. Dyscalculia is a math problem. So, not only can letters be reversed, units in numbers can also be reversed. So you watch out for that. Not because they don't have any reading problem, but because it's only in math that they are doing that. They're not doing that in reading, but that is still something that you should pay attention to. Okay? The next one is what we call inversion, where N is written instead of U. M is written instead of W. Oh, sorry about that. I received... My camera is off. So I'll start with... Can you see them now, Glidel? So this is what I was referring to earlier, omission, okay, leaving out or omitting words while reading out loud. And then the other one is what we call addition. Then we went into reversal, and now we're into inversion, okay? So again, even with the numbers, this can happen, okay? Then substitution. What is substitution? Particularly for children with poor vocabulary, or they have reading problems, but then the vocabulary is okay. Could be vocabulary is okay, that they know that huge is the same as big, that little is the same as small, but they would say big instead of huge because it's difficult to say huge. You cannot even decode it. Small is easy instead of little. I've encountered a student like this, no? He has a very high comprehension rate, but then he was very poor. He was in grade 4. And he was reading at ending grade 2 level. Then I gave him a text with a lot of word little, but instead of little, he will say small. Okay? So that is what we call substitution. Think about the students inside your classroom. Are there students in the classroom who are exhibiting this kind of symptoms or behavior or reading behavior? Okay. Then the last one is what we call transposition, where all the letters are there, but then it's entirely a new word, like class instead of salt, rices instead of cries. So these are 6 things that you watch out for when you do miscue analysis. You have omission, you have addition, reversal, inversion, substitution, and transposition. Okay? So these problems or these indications are actually could be indications of the incidence of dyslexia. Dyslexia, ladies and gentlemen, is not cognitive impairment. It's equivalent to reading disability. The IQs of individuals with reading disability are normal, average to above average. So dyslexia is not an IQ problem. It is a processing problem. They are processing words more lengthily as or compared to the neurotypical kids, no, or the non-impaired IQ reading link, no. So take a look at this. For the non-impaired, take a look at this graph. This is how they read. On the other hand, this is how the reading ability of those with dyslexia would be. Here is the IQ. Okay, I hope that you can see where my cursor is going. See, they have almost the same IQ. Okay, but this is the reading of the typical, or what we call the neurotypical individuals, those without disability. On the other hand, those who are dyslexic would have their reading here. So if you are to analyze this, it's a big gap between IQ and reading ability. Okay? That's why for most of them, they suffer from some sort of underachievement in school. Not because they don't have the ability to understand and grasp the lessons they have. It's just that the reading ability is here. And let's face the fact that most of our assessment is paper and pencil test where students are required to read. So you are testing them using their handicapping condition. Okay? So I hope that this is clear to everyone. And that is part of the reason also why it's aside from the fact that it's really a lifelong condition, it actually can affect the functioning of the person throughout life. Just like, for example, here in the Philippines, when you want to apply for a college degree, what happens? You're given a paper and pencil test. The admission or your admission would be dependent on how you scored in that paper and pencil test. So how can a dyslexic, enter a good medical school? Even if he has the intellectual capacity to become a doctor. When yung entry level pa lang, he's tested using his handicapping condition. So these are things that, are affecting individuals with dyslexia. But, with correct teaching, this gap can be lessened. Okay, that gap can be lessened with correct teaching. Okay. So we say that no reading has taken place if there is no comprehension. What then is comprehension? Comprehension is a multidimensional thinking process. Going back to the figure of the brain that I have presented earlier, it's an interaction of those three parts of the brain so that comprehension can take place. So imagine if the frontal lobe, which is part of the executive function, is impaired. So what happens? That is where your thinking skill is. That is where children are, that is where metacognition, working memory, organization is located in that part of the brain. So if that part of the brain is impaired, then comprehension will be affected. So it's a multi-dimensional complex process. It's all about the interaction of the reader, the text, and the context. On the part of the reader, this will entail a lot of retrieving what is in the memory bank of the reader and be able to connect it with the present text And where is the reader coming from? That is the context. So comprehension is all about connecting the prior knowledge with the newfound knowledge. So comprehension takes place only when a connection is formed. If there is no connection, then there is no comprehension. Okay? I remember I happened to screen, no? We do screening. That's one of the things that I do. I do screening for children with reading disability or possibly reading difficulty with possibility of reading disability. There's this one girl, she was very good at decoding. Very good at decoding. She was in grade 4 and she was reading at grade 3 level. So sa akin, okay na yun, no? That's okay. Good at decoding words. But then putting them together was a problem to her. When I asked her who, what, why, and what if questions, he was unable to answer my questions. That was after she had read the text. And for me, it might be a problem of putting all things together. So I told her, will you allow me to read to you? And after I've read to you, I want you to answer my questions. So I read the same story to her. In fact, I read the same story to her twice because the first time I read it to her, again, her answers to my what, who, what, WH questions are different. I read to her again, so testing whether her listening comprehension is better than her reading comprehension. But lo and behold, she was giving me a different answer to all my questions. When I asked the mom, they just came from psychological testing. It turned out that her IQ was that of, I think it was moderate, no? Moderate yung kanya. Kasi her IQ was around 65. So that is part of the reason why she is unable to comprehend the text that she is reading. She was able to decode the letters, the sentences, and so on. But putting all of this together is a brain-based activity. Ang problem na sa kanya is not reading anymore, but it's how the brain functions. So what I told the mom was that you better go back to the school where you took her for preschool up to grade 3, up to grade 4. Kasi nga, the reason why the child was sent to me was because the school didn't want to accept her anymore. But then I told her that they really have to transfer because that school is a big traditional school. But then I told her to go back to the school and thank the teachers. Why? The teachers are so good because they were able to teach her how to decode. But they cannot do anything anymore with the comprehension part because it's a brain-based activity. And in her case, the IQ is an indication that she will really have difficulty with comprehension. The thing is that will she be able to comprehend? Yes, she will be able to comprehend. Sorry for that. Ngayon ko nakita yung mga dapat kong i-edit. Wala pala akong letter N sa comprehension. And then, will she be able to read? Yes, but it will take more time for her. No, it will take more time for her. So that is the reason why it's very important for us to take a look at these things as a brain-based activity. So we said that again, this is repeated. It's all about word recognition, language comprehension. Therefore, you will have reading comprehension. So what are the factors that might influence comprehension skills? Let's take a look at them one by one. The knowledge the reader brings to the subject. So what is the schema of the child? What is her previous knowledge or his previous knowledge that he brings to the subject? The second one is that, is the reader interested in the subject? What is the reader's interest in what he or she is reading? If the subject is not interested to him or to her, then there's a very big chance that he will not be reading the text. The reader's purpose for reading, this is what I will always tell people or teachers. When you give a reading assignment, you give the child a purpose for reading. Give him 2 or 3 questions that he needs to answer. Because if you don't do that, most of the people, even us, no, adults, if you're into grad school and your teacher said, oh, read chapter 2 and 3, you'll end up not reading at it and you'll cram, right? Why? Because you don't have any purpose for reading. But if your instruction is, I want you to read pages 3 to 5. And after reading pages 3 to 5, I want you to look for the following things for me. Be able to answer my questions in the class when we see each other again. So it's clear there's a purpose for reading. And since they have something to look for, then they will end up reading the text or reading the assignment. Another one that would affect comprehension skill is the ability of the reader to decode rapidly. So this is about word recognition, which we have already discussed earlier. Then the number of unfamiliar words, especially if, for example, you are a teacher, you are the reading teacher, and you don't pre-read your text, and you don't actually unlock difficult words before the text is read. So K-3 teachers, this is not just confined to the K-3, but even if you're teaching in the high school, you're teaching math, you're teaching science, you're teaching economics, you're teaching Araling Panlipunan in Filipino, unlock difficult words. What could be the words, 4 to 5 words in this selection that would be difficult for my students to understand and thus would affect comprehension? Unlock them before you teach them or before you read the text with them. Okay? And when we say unlocking, it is actually giving the definition of the word as it is used, the contextual meaning, as it is used in the selection. The process is children must be able to read the word correctly before the selection is read. And then at the same time, they know the meaning of the word. In Filipino, there's a lot of words that are difficult for our children to read. In fact, there's a lot of things that you can hear. No, these are the things that you can hear from principals, from teachers. Filipino children nowadays have difficulty in Filipino-based subjects. So let's apply the unlocking of words when we teach Filipino or social studies. Umalohokan, for example. No, that's in social studies, right? You teach that in social studies. This also would appear in panitikan, no, in higher panitikan. What is umalohokan? Aside from the fact that it might be difficult for others to pronounce, what is the meaning of that? So before you read the selection, before you introduce your students to the selection, unlock. Practice saying it several times perhaps, and then the meaning. And you can even ask your students the traditional way of using umalohokan in a sentence. Some texts are different. They have the selection and then the meaning or the questions for the unlocking would be at the end. No, it should not be done that way. Unlocking should be done before the text is read, so that it would be easier for the children or for the students to read the text. Okay? The length of the sentences, again, this has to be developmentally appropriate. You can actually, you're tech savvy. Most of the teachers these days are tech savvy. You can actually Google this. How many words are there supposed to be in a sentence for grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4? And I think Scholastic also has a list for this. Okay, so that is something that you need to take a look into. The syntax, the way the words are put together, is also one of the things that might influence comprehension skills. Okay, so what are the comprehension sub-skills? Recognizing the main idea in a paragraph or a text. Recognizing, again, this can be taught explicitly, right? I will be showing you something later on how to do this. Recognizing important details in a sentence or in a passage. How do they develop mental images? Do we spend time for children to close their eyes and do an imagery of what they have read? A lot of students are visual. Okay? I think around 60 to 80%, between 60 to 80% of learners are visual. So how do we help them develop mental images? Predict outcomes, following directions, recognizing an author's organization, as well as the context of the author. Sometimes, or rather, most of the times, it's also helpful for us to read about the biography of the author before we discuss the lesson. Like, for example, Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, diba? The Adventures of Mark Twain, and so on. The author is from Mississippi. So that's why most of the scenes there are from the Mississippi River. Okay? Another thing that I have appreciated only lately is the Noli Me Tangere. The reason why I appreciated it lately, or rather, the more I appreciate it, is because of the fact, although for Noli Me Tangere, no, just to tell everybody, I have already finished at grade 4 the Noli Me Tangere for high school. What is the reason for that? We only have 2 books in our house when I was in the grade school. That is Nations of the World and Noli Me Tangere. So so that I can sleep, I will read Noli Me Tangere over and over again. And that's why when I was in high school, I didn't like the way my teacher actually in Filipino test us. Kasi ang tanong niya ay ganito, saan inahihilintulad, sorry for that, ang mga pag-uusap ng mga babae sa loob ng simbahan? I don't pay that much attention to those details, and therefore, I got the answers wrong. Balik ako sa Noli Me Tangere. Ang sagot pala ay sa halutiktik na mga butiki at huni ng daga. My goodness, for me, those are not important. Anyway, so, looking at the author, the reason why I appreciate it is that I went on a Binondo trip with Ambet Ocampo. And he took us to that place where the last scene of Capitan Tiago was during the time when Maria Clara already left him and left the house and so on, where it took place. So I appreciated it. And the fact that Rizal at one point lived in Binondo with his mother, and the house of the Lunas are also in that Binondo side. So that is the reason for his affiliation with the Luna brothers. Okay? So, magandang makita yon. Of course, hindi natin mapupuntahan ang Mississippi River para maintindihan yung context ni Huckleberry Finn tsaka ni Mark Twain, right? So, but then we can look at the biography of the author. Okay? So, another comprehension sub-skill is also about doing critical reading. And I will be giving some suggestions on this also. So, main idea, for us to be able to teach our children how to get the main idea, is that it doesn't have to come easily, no? We look at the minor supports. What is detail number 1, detail number 2? We ask questions like who, what, where, when, how, and why. And the tips would be to read the title, read the subheads, look at the first or last sentences, ask yourself, what is this text all about? So given that this is the main idea, what are the three major supports or four or two major supports? From there, what are the minor supports of these major supports? This is something that we can do in our class, no? And I think a week will be enough, no, to do this. The next week will be to enhance the skills and do more independent practice on getting the main idea. This is very important to teach in a reading class because this is something that is used in all the other subjects. Okay? Next would be, let's teach vocabulary. Children don't catch vocabulary by chance, but it has to be taught. Learners initially learn word meanings best through explicit instruction in combination with rich opportunities to listen, to observe, to participate, and to interact. Okay? So take note, best through explicit instruction in combination with opportunities to learn about it. Learners link word sounds to meanings through the context provided by predictable routines, pictures, gestures, physical movements, experiential activities. I like physical movements in particular. How do we, for example, give the meaning of the word through our physical movement by demonstrating it to our kids? And of course, experiential activities. Okay? Just to tell you a story, I was part of the team who evaluated the books in the Muslim Mindanao region. I was in Upi, Cotabato at one point, in the schools where children have to cross the river before they go to school. And they asked me to evaluate the science textbook. The topic then was on forces. And lo and behold, what I saw in the textbook was a picture of a ballerina, a ballet dancer. Why will you make use of that as a picture in explaining force to the people in Upi, Cotabato or in the ARMM region? When, if I were to teach forces, I will make it more experiential. They have a lot of goats in the area, a lot of trees, ang ganda ng panahon. You see the leaves moving. Teaching forces could be experiential, making use of nature, and not that picture of a ballet dancer. Okay? Anyway, so these are some issues in Philippine education. Learners also learn word meanings through listening to repeated readings. And that's why for parents, if you are a parent, don't get mad with your kid if he picks the same book all the time for you to read to him or to her during the evening. It's okay. They will learn from that, no? And at the same time, if you have a mini library inside your classroom and you saw in the list that your student kept on, this particular student kept on reading this, repeated readings would be good. Explicit explanations, discussion of picture books on a variety of topics in fiction and non-fiction. And one of the nice things that happened in the field of reading is the picture books, no? The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, no, regardless of the content sometimes, has actually brought a lot of children back to reading. The same with Harry Potter. Kasi yung Harry Potter, they don't just read it. If you're a Harry Potter baby, at my age, I am. I still watch the marathon of Harry Potter, but I still like the book. And just to share with you, my eldest niece, who's now a doctor, whenever there's a new film ng Harry Potter, let's say, for example, Harry Potter 4 is the film, she would go back during vacation in preparation for watching Harry Potter 4. She will not be confined to just Harry Potter 4. She will reread 1 to 4. And that's why she will tell me, oh, tita, that character is no longer in that book, or that character suddenly is no longer in the same book, is no longer in chapter so and so. I cannot find her anymore. Meron palang ganon na nangyari kay J.K. Rowling. Anyway, so all of these things will help children with comprehension. Why are we zeroing in on this? Because comprehension, or rather fluency, bridges vocabulary and comprehension. So going back to vocabulary, we say that in vocabulary learning, not one size fits all. It's actually a different way. There are different ways of teaching vocabulary. And these are some of the strategies to promote vocabulary development. Remember, vocabulary also has an impact on comprehension. So we unlock difficult words, which is what I've discussed already. We try to form connections. We teach the students the use of resources. We teach them how to make use of thesaurus. We teach them how to make use of the dictionary. And then these days, why don't you Google it? Although we need to teach them how to filter the things that they see online, okay? Or ask AI to give you the meaning. So there's a lot of resources these days that they can use for this. Now, I did mention something about the sight words. These are just some of the basic sight words because all would be dependent on the level of the child. Each level would have a different set of sight words that would have been mastered. But this is something that is compounding. Padami ng padami. At grade 1, these are the basic sight words. At grade 2, idadagdag sa grade 1. Grade 1 sight words, yung sight words na new ng grade 2, and so on. So that's why it builds on, right? So the reader is able to recognize and pronounce the word instantly, 1 second or less, every time the reader sees it. Well, the thing is this. Sight words are not decoded. Unlike, for example, cat, C-A-T, cat. Or if you are to pronounce the phonemes, cat, k-a-t, cat. But you cannot do that with could, right? Could is a sight word, k-o-u-l-d, right? Or it is not actually written as it is pronounced, right? So that's why sight words are taught explicitly. The teacher pronounces it, writes it on the board, asks the children to read it with them. Okay? So kasi po, I'm not saying all, but most of the sight words are actually words that are spelled differently as they are pronounced. And that is why they have to be taught explicitly. Okay? So marami po yan. Again, you can actually make a research on what are the sight words that a grade 4 pupil should know. What are the sight words that a grade 2 pupil should know? So these are things that you should be teaching your students. Okay? If they, for example, master 80%, 90% of the sight word for that grade level, that is good enough because that will help them become fluent readers. Okay? Okay. So again, I flashed that fluency, but I will not discuss it anymore because I have flashed it already earlier. So we say that fluency is actually affected by word reading, and we talk about correctness, or we talk about accuracy, we talk about the speed, we talk about prosody when it comes to fluency. And it is affected not only by the vocabulary, but also by word recognition and pronunciation. And then at the same time, of course, we say that fluency bridges comprehension. Okay? So what are the possible causes of word-by-word reading? Word-by-word reading, if that is the kind of reader that we have, then we say that that kid is not a fluent reader. Okay? So word-by-word reading is caused by the failure of the reader to apply decoding skills effectively. Failure to comprehend adequately. They don't understand the word. They don't understand the sentence. Poor reading efficiency skills or the lack of fluency. In some literature, fluency is coined as efficiency skills. Okay? Then what about mispronouncing the words? It could be caused by the weakness in knowledge of phonics or structural analysis, which should have been mastered by grade 3. Failure to use knowledge of phonics and again structural analysis. Instead of weak, aside from being weak, they cannot, no? Poor reading efficiency skills and the presence of hearing, speech, or language difficulties. So this is something that is already organic and innate in the child, okay? So how do we remedy all of this, no? First is to use a reading material on a lower level of reading difficulty. So if your child is exhibiting this and the child is in grade 4, I always suggest go 2 levels lower on the kind of reading material that you give to them. Why? Because we need to develop first comprehension and of course their confidence in reading the material. Like for example, your topic in science about matter, okay? You have a grade 4 text and your student cannot read that grade 4 text. Try to search for a material that is 2 levels higher, still discussing 2 levels lower, still discussing the same topic, the topic on matter. So this is the material that you will be giving your students who are exhibiting word recognition and mispronunciation problems. Have the student practice reading sight words or sight phrases cards. Okay? So individually, in fact, this can be used as something during transition. Like for example, it's a change of teachers. Then you can ask your student who's having difficulty in reading, you give them a packet of words and then ask him to read while waiting for the teacher and so on. And you can even furnish the parents with the same material so that they can still practice at home. Use material that presents no vocabulary problem, allowing the student to concentrate on phrasing without experiencing difficulty in word attack. So this is where your unlocking of words would come in. If there is no vocabulary problem, you have unlocked difficult words and made sure that the students can read and understand these difficult words, then they would be able to read it, okay? Or use a material that where the words are not that difficult, okay? One of the things that you can do also to practice fluency and to test for, what do you call this, punctuation marks, is to prepare a paragraph with no punctuation marks. And then have the students try to read it. Okay? Without any punctuation mark. And then, together, they will punctuate and read the selection again. This could be a class activity. Okay? This could be done in the class. You give them a paragraph with no punctuation marks, and then at the same time, examine and ask the students, how is their reading? How do they feel about reading without punctuation marks? Then what should be done? Okay, then together you can punctuate and read the selection again. So remember, reading fluency has something to do with right observance of the punctuation marks in a selection. Demonstrate proper phrasing by reading to the class. When do we stop reading to our classes? The answer is we don't stop reading to the class. Even if you're teaching grade 11, grade 10, grade 7, grade 4, higher level, we don't stop reading to our classes. Why? Because by reading to our classes, the secret is we get to review, no, the selection. At the same time, yun yung secret natin. Yun yung hindi alam ng estudyante natin. At the same time, we model correct reading, proper phrasing when we read to our classes. This could also be, for me, no, in my case, that's why I hate being an administrator. I'd rather be in the classroom. When I teach reading, for example, one of my favorite books to read is To Kill a Mockingbird. As I read it to my students, there are incidental learnings. What I have not realized in my first reading, something will dawn on me. Oh, so he is a mockingbird. He is the mockingbird in this chapter or in this particular part. Okay? So as a teacher, there's a lot of opportunities that can come in when you read to your class. You can also cite students who would be interested, who are not interested, who would be busy doing something, and it will help you improve yourself. It's not only improving the fluency of your children or students, but it will help you improve yourself in the way you read orally, so that you'll be able to catch the attention of everybody without shouting, Joshua, listen to me. Pay attention to me, Margaret. In silence, you'll be able to improve yourself. Okay? So it's a win-win situation. Provide choral reading with several students who phrase properly. You can group together students. Perhaps the first reading would be reading as a class. The second one will be you group your students, and then they will be doing choral reading. So it's rereading, and you'll be able to hear them read. That is what fluency is all about. And you'll be able to catch, oh, Josh is unable to catch up with the group mates. Something must be wrong with him. Or what could be the problem? So you'll be able to see who among your students you need to pay attention to. The last one in the list is my favorite, although this is not yet the last one, no? The last thing that I will be explaining to you or sharing with you. Employ the use of the reader's theater. This is a very nice way to develop fluency. How do we go about reader's theater? First, why use reader's theater? It promotes fluency. It helps readers learn to read aloud with expression. And since when you do reader's theater, these students who are doing it are in front of the class, you help them build their reading confidence. You help them build not only the reading confidence, but the confidence of facing a lot of people. So these are the importance of using reader's theater. Not only does it promote fluency, but it helps the readers learn to read aloud with expression and helps to build their confidence. How to use it? Ma'am, miss, we don't have any book where you have narrator 1, narrator 2, character 1, character 2. For the schools who have these materials, you're very lucky. Huwag niyo pong pag-alikabukin sa mga libraries at classrooms nyo. Pakigamit po. Sorry, I have to say that in Filipino. No? Pakigamit po ang mga libro. Huwag pong imbakin sa library if you have these materials. If you don't have these materials, you can choose a story that can be divided into parts or characters, and then assign reading parts to each child. Actually, there are downloadable materials these days if you don't have them in your school. You ask students to read their scripts orally for practice. Don't put them on the spot right away. Give them time to practice. And then have the students read assigned parts to the audience. What else can they learn from here? They can learn taking turns. They need to wait for the first one to finish before they can speak, and that is turn taking. That is again another skill that they can get from using readers theater. What other skill? Paying attention. They have to listen to the members of the theater so that they will know when is their part. So you see, it's not only reading. There are other sub-skills, soft skills that children can learn from the use of readers theater. Not only learn, but acquire. Turn taking, paying attention, respecting others who are reading, confidence in facing an audience, and of course, the other reading skills, in particular, fluency. You can even, You can even ask them to dress up, wear headdresses to indicate the character that they are portraying. Okay, so there's a lot of things that can be done. So readers theater does not require acting. Where is the emphasis here? The emphasis is in the fluency in reading, their intonation, observance of the punctuation marks, imitating the sound of the bird, the sound of the dog that they are portraying, and so on, but not in movements, because they need to carry a book with them. The book is in front of them. They are reading the book. Or if it is a selection, I suggest that you put it in a cardboard paper, cardboard material, so that it will not like a book. They can actually hold it in one hand and then deliver. Okay. All right. So that's your readers theater. That is one of the best way to develop fluency. There's a lot of books. There are chapter books. There are actually, if you are a teacher of Filipino, we have a lot of Filipino books that can be turned into a reader's theater in Filipino. So that way you can also develop the fluency skills of our students in Filipino who have really difficulty in pronouncing Filipino words. Okay? So reader's theater is not just confined to English, it can also be extended to your Filipino subjects. Okay? Then this one, peer-mediated instruction. If children have difficulty with reading, then you also have students who are very good in reading. So what you can do is during shared reading exercises, somebody who's not so good in reading can be paired with somebody who's good in reading. So that way they can learn from each other. Do you know that peer-mediated instruction is a gold standard in teaching? By gold standard, we mean it has been tested through time that it really works. Children, particularly those in the intermediate level in particular, would love to read would love to learn from their peers, no? They learn from their peers. So this is a gold standard in teaching peer-mediated instruction. We also need to teach metacognitive strategies. We look into the kind of questions that we ask our students. Sometimes we say, oh, our students are so good. They are able to answer all my questions. The thing is, what kind of questions do you ask them? Are there opportunities for higher order thinking skills? At the same time, when you talk about metacognitive strategies, part of it, or rather most part of it, would be teaching our kids how to check on themselves. Other definition of metacognition would be taking a step back and looking at how one did in a particular situation. You can also ask your students, oh, what do you think, how do you think is your what do you think about your performance today? How would you rate your performance on a scale of 1 to 3? You'll say 2, for example. So why do you say that it's just a 2? Why not 3? So it's actually teaching metacognition, because if children learn from how they did before, they will be able to perform better the next time. So it's not just a matter, oh, we did reader's theater, tapos na. There has to be some sort of metacognition also. Checking on themselves, the children, evaluating how they performed in that particular subject or situation. Take a look at the amount of reading instruction that we have. How much time is spent on reading instruction? It's 40 minutes per day for 5 days. Is that enough? I don't think it's enough, right? So what kind of extended reading activities are given to them to be done at home? So the quality of the materials and the activities that we give them at home is also vital in their development of good reading abilities. One of the things that I've mentioned earlier is to give them a purpose for reading, especially for our older kids. Okay? In the olden days, our students would always follow what the teacher said, but not these days anymore. That's your alpha generation. Anyway, especially for our older kids, they will not do it because there's a lot of distractions around. Okay, so that's why it's important for us to give them a purpose for reading. Why do they have to read it? What is the reason? What is it that you want them to look for? What is it that you want them to learn, to find out in that reading material? Okay. One of my favorites would be read for example, let me go back to Kill a Mockingbird. I want you to read, I will always make use of the pronoun I. You know, it's so powerful. When you make use of that, when you give instructions to your kids, parang nakakatakot kasi daw siguro, no? So I will tell my students, for example, during that time, all right, everybody, I want you to read chapter 4 of To Kill a Mockingbird. And in chapter 4, I want you to find out who is the mockingbird in this chapter. Okay, so something like that. Then this one are forms that you can use. So the independent reading form, what is the book title? What is the rating? For the rating, you can make use of the rubrics I have presented earlier. And this one is something that I got from one of my favorite scholastic homework books. It's The Fairy Tale with a Twist. So this is about the story of the three little pigs. Okay. So it is the child who would be putting the adjective and then the verb, the noun, and so on. So it's a different story. So it becomes a fairy tale with a twist. This will actually be a challenge to the creativity and of course the vocabulary of the students. But then if this is shared in class, different stories coming from one fairy tale, but then it has become a totally different story, this would be a nice discussion among the children or in the class. No, this is a nice sharing. And I don't know if any one of you have encountered the true story of the three little pigs. In the true story of the three little pigs, the story was written from the perspective of the wolf. And the summary of that story is that the wolf was saying, I don't really intend to kill the pigs, but I have allergies. My intention was just to bake a cake. And he went to the first pig, the house of the first pig, to borrow some sugar, to borrow something. But then every time his allergy would be there and he would sneeze and the houses were ruined and the pigs were killed. So it's not really his intention. So that's the story of the three little pigs from the perspective of the wolf. One time I had to substitute for a reading teacher, for an English teacher in the school. And that's what you do when you're an administrator sometimes, no? So the topic was on plot. So they were grade 9 students, equivalent, third year high school. So what did I do? What I did was I came up with a graphic organizer about plot. I teach them what plot is all about, how to look for the plot the first day, and then I introduced them the graphic organizer. The second day, we tried to organize the plot of the story that we've read in the class using that graphic organizer. The next day, I asked my secretary to get the children's books in the library. Cinderella, the small ones, yung pwedeng basahin in 10 minutes, and so on. My children's books, I have a collection of that. So she went to my class and distributed the books as well as the graphic organizer and asked the grade 9 students or the third year high school students during that time to draw the plot of each book that they have given. And in this particular exercise, there's no repetition. There were 20 students in the class. I have 20 children's books, so different books for different students. Okay? So what happened there? One of the students went down to my office and said, "We're already in third year. Why are you asking us to read children's books?" And I told her it's not all about the books. What is our lesson for today? What is our lesson for this week? It's about plot. Isn't Cinderella, the story of Cinderella has plot? The story of this has plot, and that's what you're going to do. Get the plot of these books. With that, she returned to the classroom. Okay? So you see, these are things that can be done in the classroom, even if it's in different level. One time in the same class, because I think the teacher got sick during that time, I was with Dr. Luis Gatmaitan, one of our award-winning authors for Filipino books. And I was telling him, "Oh, I'm running out of things to teach to my class because for the information of everybody, as mentioned earlier, I'm a math major actually." And then he said, "Why don't you ask them to write a story based on different thing? Like, for example, the way he did ang ambisyosong stethoscope, it's actually writing the story of Jose Rizal based on the stethoscope that he bought in Germany." Sabi ko, "Oo nga, no?" So sabi niya, "What about alamat ng strawberry? Wala pa kasing nasusulat na alamat ng strawberry." "Oh, that's a good idea." So the next day, I went to my classroom, to my class, and asked them as part of their writing assignment to write about their version of alamat ng strawberry. So you see, there's a lot of things that can be done, no, in the class. So I love this kind of things where the students get engaged because they are doing things out of the ordinary or outside the conventional way of doing things. It's not just reading, but then it actually is a challenge to their creativity, their vocabulary, and so on. So there's a lot of things that you can do in the classroom. These are just some of the examples that I was able to do in my classes. Okay. So with Scholastic, you have this. I hope that you're able to do this. So you'll be able to come up with assignments based on the reading levels of your students. Okay. So what else? We encourage extension of thinking. It's not just about the story that they have read, but rather what are the social and political and mental and psychological implications of these stories that they have read? How do they extend it to their life? I teach physics. And one of the things that I love doing in my classes is that when we go to that part on gravitation, I teach them the theory about the principle of gravitation, how to compute for it, what is the mathematical equivalent, and so on. But one of the things that I would usually ask them to do is that in your life, I don't want you to be putting numbers. I don't want you to be putting formulas. I don't want you to be computing anything. But what is the effect of gravitation in your life? How do you feel it? What is that point in your life when you're very high there? And we said in the gravitation, what is the velocity at the top? Then there's no other way but to go down. So what are these things that you can relate to in your life? So you see, it's about gravitation, but then it is extended to something else, no? Not just because it's a physics concept, it is confined to physics. No, it could be extended to real life event, real life situation. Okay, that's why I love physics. There's a lot of interconnections. And I'm pretty sure most of you here don't. Anyway, so encourage extension of thinking. You're talking about Noli Me Tangere with Padre Damaso. For example, in Noli Me Tangere, no? Padre Damaso during the dinner and so on, what was served. These days, what is being served during dinner in when you have people like him and so on. What was the intention of, for example, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird by coming up with this book? In our political situation, for example, the flood control issue, who is the mockingbird? Who were the people who killed the mockingbirds and so on? So, extension of socio-political situations, even with Mark Twain, for example, the story of that. There's a lot of books, no? Like, for example, the Bridge to Terabithia, no? It's about it. You can associate that to the mental issues of teenagers these days. So encourage extension of thinking. We also give opportunities to enhance critical thinking skills, like putting children in the situation where the characters of the story are. Okay? Integrate students' choice. Kasi nga, di ba, sabi kanina, part of the reason why students are having difficulty with word recognition in the reading is because the subject matter does not interest them. The topic does not interest them. So that's why we have to integrate students' choice. And Scholastic can provide that for us, no? That's the reason why up to now we're still into Scholastic, because there is students' choice. Aside from the books that you assign to the students, then they have choices. And that's also at Alpha Angelicum, for example, we have the mini library. The mini library is composed of 25 titles of books inside our classroom, where the students can just reach out to the book and read it at their leisure time while waiting for the next teacher to come and so on. It's their choice. It's something that teachers don't dictate to them to read. Okay? Model good reading habits. This is something that teachers and parents are supposed to be doing. Okay? When was the last time you've read a real book? Okay. If you practice dear or drop everything and read, is it just for the student or is it for everybody? If it is a school-wide drop everything and read, which, by the way, is a very good practice, then everybody in the school should be doing it. Your cashier, what do you call this? The janitors, they should be reading something. That's drop everything and read school-wide. Okay? But then, of course, it's impossible these days because of the demands of the work, but then it can be done inside the classroom. And when you say drop everything and read, teachers don't text. Okay, make sure that your cellular phones are not with you when you go inside the classroom. It's not only the children who should be reading and drop everything and read. The same with the teachers. The same with when you do sustained silent reading. It's similar to DEAR, sustained silent reading, or what we call SSR. Everybody should be reading at that point. Okay. Then encourage parents to build their own home library. No, it's nice if children have access, no, to good reading materials in their homes. What else can be done to bridge the learning gaps? No? What is working? The integration and holistic modalities in teaching, meaning to say, everything has to be integrated. Like not everything, but as much as possible, we integrate subjects. If you're teaching Filipino and social studies, so perhaps that could be integrated. And what you will be having in your, for example, reading class in Filipino could be the text that you will be teaching in social studies or araling panlipunan. That way, there could be rare reading, and the children will have more time for comprehension, for comprehending the araling panlipunan text. The same with if you're teaching science and you're also the English teacher, one of the things that you can do is to make use of the science textbook as your reading material. Okay. Small but frequent assessment procedures. Check on your students, check on their learning every now and then. Balancing of online and offline tasks. Okay. More and more studies are showing that we need to go back to the basic, no? So there has to be a balance between online and offline tasks, and using different modalities of assessment is working. To develop literacy skills, again, this is an extension of bridging the gap. We model good reading habits. Create a reading corner in your classroom where your students can relax and read books, giving them a purpose for reading, listening to children read, and then checking for comprehension. What is working? I love this is clear expectation setting, meaning we need to articulate what we want our students to do. What is it that we expect them to do? We also have to be consistent. We need to be creative, yes, but then we need to be consistent in what we do. Fidelity of practice. We stick to the good practices, no, the gold standards, and we consistently do that. Communication. We communicate the importance of telling parents how their children are. Hindi lang ikaw nagsusumbong kapag hirap ka, but then when you talk to parents, you also should communicate to parents what are the things that you've already done. It's not just, oh, your child is like this, like that, and so on. It's also, Mommy, we've done this. How is he at home? We've already been doing this, but still, here are the things that he is doing. So it's important to be like that when you communicate with parents. At the same time, you don't only call their attention when the child has a problem. If the child has done well, you can write a small note, because communication is not oral all the time. You can just write a small note that Joshua did good today. Joshua was able to help her classmate today, or Joshua was able to, his classmate today, or Joshua was able to read with minimal assistance today. Okay? Compassion is working, no? Compassion, because when we have this, then we don't just employ our brains, but we also include our heart in dealing with our students. Collaboration with other teachers. It's also important to communicate with the other teachers within the level, because that way you can check on, oh, bakit sa akin lang siya ganun? How come in the math teacher or with the math teacher he's like this, but how come with reading he's like this? Okay. What works? Build vocabulary, listen to how students read, and of course, lastly, Be a 21st century teacher. The others I've already discussed. Other ways to do with less, I've already discussed thematic lessons, integrated lessons, the use of the four-pronged approach in reading, okay, but that is another discussion, and of course, collaboration with other subject teachers. What are the characteristics of becoming a first-rate reader? So preparing to read, the child must be able to overview the material, gone through the chapter objectives. Tinitingnan din yung graphic design of the material. What is the reason for doing that? Because somehow it will give them a clue as to what the material is all about. What are the primary and the secondary headings? And then the questions at the end. So that is how to prepare to read. You don't read right away, but then this is actually part of the book knowledge for early readers. For the first reading, you read through the material without stopping, underline familiar words with a pencil, put a question mark next to any sentence or passage that is unclear. In fact, when students read, don't be very strict with them to the extent that you don't want them to be holding a pen or a pencil. Because the pen or the pencil would be very important and useful for them, particularly in identifying what words are difficult for them. And then some students will make use of what we call marginalia. That is, they will draw what the first paragraph is all about. They will have figures at the side or at the margin. That is what we call marginalia. So that will help them with comprehension. Okay? For the second reading, they read the material again, this time more carefully. They look for connection, patterns. They question the writer, or where is the writer coming from? Why is he doing this? And look for larger implications. Anticipate discussion questions. This is something that could be taught. And if we only are able to do this, then we can have first-rate readers in our classrooms. Characteristics of good readers, because we don't just discuss problems, but let's take a look at who are the good readers. They preview the reading material to get an overview of the content. They start reading assignments early enough to complete them thoroughly and carefully. They underline or circle vocabulary words to look up and then do so later on. They become actively involved with the text, identify relationships. They question the writer. They anticipate questions, and so on. Okay? So anyway, I think Scholastic, you can share this with the participants, no? So other things that might not be in the discussion will be, or that might not have something to do with reading, we focus on equity. We differentiate whenever necessary. Then another important thing is putting a structure in the classroom. Because if the class is not structured, then it's gonna be difficult for us to teach. Read to the children. This has been discussed earlier. We catch them being good and we celebrate successes no matter how small or big they are. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for sharing your time and expertise with us today, Dr. Allen. The strategies you shared are extremely practical as they build on what we already do as reading and literacy teachers. We hope that through the insights you've provided, we can more effectively address challenges in teaching fluency so we can help our learners in the lower grades build a strong foundation in reading without struggling with word recognition, and those in the upper grades to strengthen their comprehension and reading efficiency. By focusing on these areas, we aim to support all our students in developing stronger reading comprehension skills. Everyone, I can already see we have a lot of hearts for Doc Allen, so thank you so much. I'm sure everyone in today's webinar has gained valuable insights from you. To our guests, please feel free to share your key takeaways in the chat box. Dr. Allen, in the registration, we asked participants to write their questions for you. So as our participants are gathering their thoughts after hearing their talk, I think we can ask a few questions they asked during the registration. So the first one When teaching reading fluency, what aspects should school administrators or curriculum heads prioritize in their programs to ensure effective learning outcomes?
So these for administrators, right?
Yes.
So I think one of the things that we administrators should focus on will be, do we have enough materials for teachers to use to teach fluency or to develop fluency? When you talk about materials, it has to be leveled materials that would be appropriate to the developmental stages of the children. It might not be a lot, but then that's one of the things. Another would be to support the creativity of the teachers in teaching fluency as well. And then I think one of the third one would be to ensure that there is monitoring. At the same time, there is validation of the reading abilities of the children. So teachers would report that this is the reading ability of the children, that these are the grades. But then, how then do grades translate to the real ability? Sometimes the grades are not reflective of the real ability. The grades is like this, but then when you take a look at the actual ability, it's different. So it's actually coming up with practices. My context might be different from yours, but actually coming up with practices that would validate whether the grade is reflective of the fluency of the child or the ability of the child would be good. How you do it, I'm not so sure, because it will all depend on the present resources that you have. It's taking an inventory of the resources that you have. Like, for example, if you have a reading expert in the school, then perhaps the reading expert can take a look into that.
Thank you so much, Doc Allen. So I'm already seeing responses in our chat box. So from ATI, Teacher Ronnie, as you were sharing, I was already also mentally reviewing our practices in school. So I think that's also interesting, right? So as we were hearing Dr. Allen talk, we're already thinking about what we're doing correctly and what we can also adapt. I have one more question during the registration. So this is from our teachers. Students in today's generation are English speakers, and yet they have difficulty in reading that's why they have difficulty, sorry, in reading the Filipino words. What can be done to motivate them in reading and understanding Filipino books?
I think I've given a lot of examples on how to develop their interest in reading books. So this would actually entail a lot of cooperation between or among teachers. In one of my examples, it could be a collaboration between, for example, the Araling Panlipunan teacher and the Filipino teacher. Baka pwede na yung gamitin sa pagbasa sa Filipino ay yun ang mismong AP na text. Para pagdating niya sa AP, medyo madali na kasi nabasa na niya sa Filipino. Tapos yung proseso din ng unlocking ng difficult words, doon din dapat mangyari sa dalawang subjects na yun o kahit anong subject sa Filipino. Exposing them also to a lot of Filipino books or storybooks in Filipino these days. And they are not that expensive, no? There's also a lot of publishers who are into this. More and more publishers are into this na hindi na-confine sa textbook. But the textbook kasi, yung illustration, hindi siya interesting masyado. At saka hindi siya, walang clues as to what the story is all about or what the selection is all about. Kasi nga, limited yung number of pages niya. So, one of the good practices also, no, taking this from Dr. Feli Pado of UP, one of the gurus of beginning reading in the UP College of Education, is actually, her students actually look forward to Mondays. Because every Monday, she would share a book. And then she will make use of the four-pronged approach, and the lessons are integrated and are coming from that book that she had shared that Monday. So Tuesday, may reading na naman, tsaka activity na kaakibat doon sa libro na yon. So that's what she had done. That's what she would usually share. And every time, her students would be nagging their parents, baka malate sila ng Monday, mamimiss nila yung story ni Teacher Feli. So, yun yung isa, no? Pangalawa, no? Yun ang isa sa pwedeng gawin. Marami pa, no? Yung, ako, sinasabi namin parate sa Reading Association of the Philippines, let's bring back Lola Basyang in the classroom. Not only in the house, but also in the classroom. Kaya yung ability ng teacher na mag-read sa bata ay mahalaga. At yun ay dapat ginagawa parati.
I agree with everything actually that you have shared, Dr. Allen. And I'm also, that's a great way for kids to get excited on a Monday, right?
Yeah.
Especially when after the weekend they all had all fun school na naman on a Monday, but getting them excited is really great.
Saka
And
especially in the
reading.
early grades, no? In the
Yes.
early grades. Kasi yung sa early grades, pwede mong i-web yung lesson mo based on the story.
Yes,
Halimbawa
definitely.
yung sa It's Mine by Leo Leone. I don't know if you have, meron, sa Scholastic yung book na yun, no? It's Mine by Leo Leone. So it's about the story of the three frogs. So there's movement, so pwede mo ng PE yun. There's arts, you can do sequencing. But sa Tagalog, halimbawa, yung libro ni Dr. Gatmaita na nang maghasik kami ng lagim, nang maghasik ng lagim, si Lolit Lamok. So it's about dengue. It's a story that could be read in the class. And then there are other lessons that could be webbed from that story.
Yes, that's true. Well, all right. So we think we have a question from ADI from teacher Ronnie. Any suggestion po on how we can improve our learning support program for struggling readers?
Oh. Again, it goes back to materials, no? For struggling readers, I suggest, no, as I've mentioned earlier, we make use of a reading material that is 2 levels lower. That's my suggestion, just to catch up. Because, and daily practice also, no, daily reading practice. And when you do remediation, don't make use of the material that they are struggling with. The misconception of a lot of educators regarding remedial classes is that you reteach. No, reteaching will not be the solution, but rather you take a look at where the students are. You start where the students are, and then make use of materials that would be appropriate for them. Okay. Just like, for example, if the child is in grade 5 and the reading ability is grade 3, so for the remedial classes or grade 4, for example, for the remedial classes, kasi kung sequencing details naman yan, kahit grade 2 material nga, pwede mo pa rin ituro yung sequencing details, di ba? But then you're making use of a material that the students are comfortable with, that they could easily read it, but you don't stop at that. So, hindi naman parating ganun. So, the next time, taasan mo naman yung level ng material na bibigay mo sa kanila. But not at the expense of the skills that they are supposed to learn. Or the topic. So, that could be done. So, for struggling readers.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Allen, from CDNMSR, Teacher Arnolfo. I couldn't think of any questions now. Dr. Allen has provided us many thoughts, including examples. This
Thank
webinar is
you.
great. So thank you so much as well. And I've also learned a lot listening to you po. Given the limited from DACCA, from teacher Marilu Abalo, given the limited time for each subject in the class, I think thematic approach would be a great practice.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. So I think, do we have more insights? No more questions? I think our teachers, our educators are processing everything that has been talked about this morning. I have one more question though. And think this is a great ending message for our morning. What is your message to teachers who feel overwhelmed by the widening reading gap?
To the teachers who are overwhelmed by the widening reading gap, I think we need to take this as a challenge. And it is something that we need to work on and spend time on, making sure that our readers become fluent readers by one, spending more time for reading. The other subjects will follow. The other subjects will follow, especially for the foundational skills, no? The foundational skills. Second will be to start where the students are. No, aside from the fact that we are giving them more time for reading, giving them more, not only reading, no, but then giving them more opportunities for literacy. Because it's not only reading these days, no, there has to be thinking skills, there has to be critical thinking, the 21st century skills that are needed. We start where they are. And for the younger learners, no, for them, the foundational skills, the phonemic awareness part, the fluency part. Kasi po malaki yung K to 3 eh. Malaki yung job ng K to 3. Kaya kayo parati yung nasisisi. Pasensya na ha. Kasi everything that is taught, or rather reading has to be taught at that stage. So if they encounter difficulties later on, it's because they might not have mastered the skills that they should have mastered at K to 3. So that's why the building on the foundational skills, the retraining of teachers in the K to 3 is very important. Ownership, and as I've mentioned, fidelity of practice. The AVK, for example, if you're into auditory visual kinesthetic technique in the teaching of reading, that's actually a gold standard. So stick to it. Pag sinabi natin pong fidelity of practice, consistency in what we are doing. And consistency also in kid watching. Another thing that you can do is to differentiate instruction. For the struggling readers and those who are not struggling, what are the things that can be done to the struggling readers? This might be the students who need more instruction time, more practice time. Then to the administrators, let's try to come up with ways and means on how to help the teachers so that they'll be able to address these struggling readers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for your thoughtful responses. We truly appreciate you taking the time to address and engage with the questions from our fellow educators. With everything that's said, everyone, let's give Dr. Merlene Allen another warm round of applause and a shower of emojis.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have this kind of opportunity to share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Allen, and thank you to our participants who enriched the discussion with their questions and insights. Dear guests, kindly let us know what you think about this webinar. Please take time to answer the short feedback form you may access through the QR code or through the link posted in the Zoom chat box. An electronic certificate of participation will be sent to you after you have answered the feedback form from today until early next week. Thank you very much for choosing to be with Scholastic today. We wish you a restful weekend. Keep healthy and well, everyone. Thank you.